So we've seen the Warriors do this year in and year out, leave a roster spot open in hopes of someone coming free on the buyout market. Everybody's waiting for this Dame trade and perhaps a James Harden trade, and there could be some bigger names perhaps on the buyout market. And so that's the word right now from the Warriors is they're going to leave that roster spot open. But I thought today we would take a look at a few names that would play different roles in that final roster spot for the Warriors. Let's start with probably the biggest name left on the free agent market in Christian Wood. 27 years old, was in Dallas last year, from Houston to Detroit, right? He's had this meteoric rise and then kind of fall all, within a few years span here. 27 years old, what does he go, about 6'10", slight built, right? But he is a stretch 4'5", and he would really be efficient, I think, in the Warriors space, attacking closeouts, the ability to spread the floor, and then he's a go-get-a-bucket guy, man. The one thing you talk about losing Jordan Poole is he was the one go-get-a-bucket guy outside of Steph, obviously, right? That it was like, hey, Wiggins can do it, but it's not really in his mentality. That's not who he is as a player. And losing Poole, we don't have very many of those options on this current roster, and Christian Wood fits that bill. He's a go-get-a-bucket guy. He can operate in space, and he's a very skilled offensive player. Now, the defensive side of the basketball with Christian Wood, again, like a Jordan Poole, it's frustrating because he has the physical attributes to be a decent defender, right? It's not that. Some guys, it's like, all right, they're not long enough, they're slow, they're never going to be a good defender. It is what it is. Christian Wood could be a better defender than he is, but you watch basketball long enough and you have to come to the realization and accept that some guys, it is what it is. He's never going to be wired that way. He's never going to take the amount of pride or competitive spirit that you want him to on the defensive end, right? But that's not to say, listen, offensively, he is a bucket, right? And, it would be an element that the Warriors don't have, and he does it with size, right? Playing the 4-5 position. But ultimately, Christian Wood, he's kind of like the hot chick who's been married 3 times, and I think the whole league is kind of like, well, dude, you're talented, man. You're really talented. Why is everybody like, thanks, but no thanks? And so perhaps locker room issues, maturity issues, character issues, nothing has really been reported. I remember there was the one incident in Houston where he took off the bench with, I think it was Jalen Green or somebody, Kevin Porter Jr. I think it was he and Kevin Porter Jr. They got into it with John Lucas Sr., a triple OG, and left out the game early. So there's been some spats here and there, but, not thought of as a great locker room or character guy. Every spot he's been at, they've quickly kind of moved off him, but yet he is a prototypical modern stretch 4, right? So it's a high risk, high reward play. I don't know if the Warriors would want to bring him into the locker room that they're trying to clean up. They're trying to rebuild the chemistry. And so maybe that's just a non-starter for them. They're like, no, we're not considering him. So I'll give you an alternative who does kind of the same thing. That would be TJ Warren. 29 years old. He's much more of a Warriors type guy. I think he would fit the culture better. He's more buttoned up, but he is much more of an injury risk. Remember, he had the breakout year in the bubble, right? And then he had was it plantar fasciitis? He had something wrong with his foot that robbed him of like 2 seasons. Now, he was in Brooklyn and he appeared to be healthy, and then he showed back up in Phoenix with Durant. And so if he's healthy, he provides the same thing Christian Wood does, right? He's a little smaller at 6'8", but he's much more built, but he's a bucket. He's a clear out, go get a bucket guy, can shoot the 3, play the stretch 4. And again, probably he's a less risky guy to add to your locker room, but he certainly doesn't have the potential that Christian Wood would add, but that would be the same type of player. Here's a name for you. How about Kelly Oubre Jr., the defender, right? We just talked about the scorer, the go-get-a-bucket guy. Kelly Oubre Jr. would be, y'all are familiar with him. You remember the season, right? But he's 27 years old. He can guard 1 through 4. To me, Oubre's greatest ability or asset is his motor and his energy, particularly on, nights where the team may not have the energy and they don't have the focus. He can raise the energy level of an entire team or entire 5 guys out there with how hard he plays. You can stick him on the other team's premier wing defender, right? Take some of that load off of Wiggins. But But as we know, that one year, what was it, 1920, the COVID year, right? He's not exactly a system fit. Oubre is much more of a kind of standstill isolation scorer. And, he can be erratic shot selection. I think Steph and they were frustrated with the way he operated offensively in the system. That being said, he did spend a year in it, and it felt like towards the end of that season, he started to get it, right? He started to cut and set the screens and do that type of stuff. And so, I think the concept in today's basketball is you can never have too many big wing defenders, right? And then Oubre does have that irrational confidence where, hey, he could flip a playoff game. If he's in a playoff game, Oubre could hit 7 threes and guard Luka, right? He has that type of explosive capabilities, but we also know there's nights where he can kind of blow things up if he's out there enough and he's trying to do too much. So the alternative to Oubre would be another returning Warrior in Glenn Robinson III. You probably heard the rumors, right, that he is making his NBA return. He's been out like 2 years, right? So, but he's still only 29 years old, I believe. And GR3, again, he's going to provide that wing defense. It's this. I'm giving you an alternative. It's the same type of player, but again, more of a culture fit, more buttoned up, but far less potential, right? Like I said, Oubre could explode and could really raise the ceiling of a team given the right circumstances. GR3, he just doesn't play with the same motor that Oubre does, and he doesn't have the same irrational confidence, which you could view as a good or a bad thing, right? But he's going to guard. You could put him on the other team's best, wing scorer. He can shoot the three efficiently enough. He knows the system. And I think everybody loved him in the locker room, right? So again, how would the Warriors want to play it? You want to play it safe with GR3, or do you want to reach for the potential of Kelly Oubre Jr. and what he could bring as that, big wing defender? Last but not least, Dwight Howard, a rim protector. Now, Dwight is 37 years old. What did he spend last season in Taiwan? That looked super crazy. You see any of that video? That was crazy, right? But listen, at 37, I would categorize Dwight with Steph and LeBron in the sense of the way he takes care of his body. Once he got past those back issues, he was already such a physical specimen, but he's not your typical 37-year-old. I think he has a lot left in the tank physically, and he still has that youthful energy that helps him, right? And he said he's wanted to join the Warriors. I feel like we've been talking about Dwight Howard joining the Warriors for about 2 years. So I'm not holding my breath here, but let me point one thing out to you that's important. You remember the Lakers bubble championship, whatever you want to call it. In that matchup against the Denver Nuggets, you could make the argument without Dwight Howard, they may not get past Denver. I'll put it to you like this. Dwight Howard has done as good a job defending Jokic as I've seen any other big in the league. Right now, granted, Jokic is even better now, right? You're not going to stop him, but he's a big body that you could put on a Jokic, put on an Embiid, and put on a true center, a guy that we don't really have that. We're still looking for that rim protection, right? The cons, listen, he's a goof, right? We know he's kind of goofy, and again, how wary are they of adding a big personality to the locker room in a guy like Dwight Howard? But I'd push back and say that at this point in his career, I think he knows who he is. I think he'd buy into a limited role, right? And then maybe there's a concern that he doesn't buy into the offense. But again, he's no longer calling for post catches. When Dwight Howard was in his prime, right, it was like this thing where he was like, hey, I want touches. I want post touches. Now that he is accepted being a role player and a rim protector, a lob threat, I think he's much more likely to fit into the Warriors system. Now, what would be the alternative rim protector for us here? The rumor is the Dallas Mavericks are probably going to buy out JaVale McGee unless they trade him. They've been trying to trade him. I don't know what it is. He had a falling out with them, but they're done with JaVale. And so you could potentially wait for JaVale to be bought out somehow, some way, and have, another former Warrior, right? And I think we know what he brings to the table. Now, I'm a little wary just because Dallas, I don't know if it's the Jason Kidd thing or what, because when they signed him a year ago, I was like, oh, that's a great ad for them, right? Because he was really good for Phoenix the year before, and then he just never really played for Dallas. And so as long as he's physically still good, we know what he provides. Draymond loves playing with him. He already knows the system. It's a seamless locker room fit. And that's what I'll say about like adding a Dwight or a JaVale or a guy with a bigger personality. We've heard Steph and these guys talk about, we only have time to focus on winning right now, right? And there's this serious tone that everybody's taking headed into this season. Understandably, you do need an icebreaker. You do need a guy that is able to lighten the mood a little bit in the locker room, right? And so JaVale or Dwight fits that bill. Let me know who you would like to fill that last roster spot with. If it's a name I missed, I think I'm cool off Christian Wood. I think that's a little bit too risky. I would prefer either bringing back Oubre or giving Dwight a shot. I think Oubre at this point in his career and in the familiarity, adding another wing guy, to lessen the load on Wiggins, you just can't have too many of those guys. And he shoots the three well enough, right? I like taking a little bit more of a risk as opposed to GR3 just playing that safe, or Dwight. I'd prefer a big body, but those are my two on this list. Again, let me know in the comments who you guys are eyeing, or if you just want to leave the spot open. Is there someone I'm missing? Potential buyout candidates? I haven't really heard any other than JaVale. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.